Good evening, and thanks for joining us for this discussion on how to stop the violence. In response to the shootings in El Paso and Dayton, people have been gathering in desperation, many shouting in unison, "Do something." Action. That's what we're going to be talking about this half hour. What steps can be taken right now from the halls of schools to the halls of Congress to prevent this kind of domestic terrorism? This is a digital town hall of sorts, so please head to the News 8 Facebook page to submit questions. Maureen McGuire is tracking that now, and will ask some of those questions momentarily. Our panel today runs the opinion gamut, if you will. Joining me now is the first set of our guests. We have Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter. Thank you for joining us.
It was a pleasure.
Of course. And we have Sattler-Leblanc. She comes from Moms Demand Action. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to give you guys ultimate power right now.
Oh, really?
With the snap of a finger, you can make one change in relation to this issue. Sheriff Baxter, what would that be?
Well, I think awareness. We got to make everybody aware that this is the #1 problem facing us. You know, this is when we're in denial mode, when we're pointing fingers at each other, when we're looking for, simple causes. We're never going to actually get to the bottom of the root of the problem. You know, and we got a violence problem in America. We got a mental health problem. We got a gun issue in America. But we need to stop digging in our trenches and be more open and more frank to conversations.
Very good. Sharon?
Very simply, keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous people.
Any particular way to do that?
Well, there's a lot of ways we can do that. One of the first ways we can do that is having a criminal background check on every transaction. So anytime a firearm changes hands, whether through a commercial sale or a private transaction, to put it through a background check. And again, it's a criminal background check. So we want to make sure criminals don't have firearms. If you're a law-abiding citizen, it'll take you 15 minutes. So that's one thing. The other thing is, again, just for gun owners, fostering safe storage and modeling responsible behavior. Things like securing your firearms at home, making sure those kids don't have access to those safes. You know, if you're wanting to raise your kids to learn to handle firearms appropriately, they should always be doing it supervised by you and by a trained person. And again, one of the good ways to do that is just keep it secure.
Very good. We're going to head over to Maureen McGuire right now. Maureen, any particular questions stand out at this point?
Yes, Adam, a lot of people weighing in on this topic, as you can imagine. We've got a question right now from John Hoban, and he is asking what new surveillance from local, state, and national police is happening to spot dangerous individuals who publicly post materials on 8chan, gaming, and other sites with ideas on mass murders.
All right. Sheriff Baxter, this seems like a question for you.
Sure. So we have a crime analysis center. All our urban areas around upstate New York have the same type of resources. Anytime we get anybody that we are of concern of, whether it's coming from a school district, a police law enforcement agency, a mental health institution, we start running checks on the social media sites. So we go as deep as we can, without a warrant. And that there's obviously probable cause for a warrant. We can get a warrant and go deeper into those sites and look behind the walls. So that's a normal process for to look at. When someone pops on our radar, and going back to my earlier statement, that's what we need to talk more about. How do we see these things? How do we get into predictive mode a lot more? And we're doing a great job of that here in Monroe County. We're breaking down those walls and those silos and talking to each other. School districts, law enforcement, mental health community are talking about issues and people that might, raise to this level, and see if we can be a little more preventive.
Very good. We want to go now to a statement made by President Trump. He talked about gun control today. Here's his response when asked about a ban of assault weapons, which has become a loaded term, so to speak. So let's call them semi-automatic rifles with features that make it easier to kill a large number of people. Here's his response when asked about a ban on those weapons.
Well, I can tell you that there is no political appetite for that at this moment. If you look at, you could speak, you could do your own polling, and there's no political appetite from it from the standpoint of legislature, but I will certainly bring that up. I'll bring that up as one of the points.
What's your response to that?
I don't believe that's accurate. Our House has passed legislation to create federal background checks, and we're just waiting for the Senate to act on that. So it's encouraging. We're hearing Republicans in the Senate starting to talk about these things. Lindsey Graham was even talking about it, and so we're starting to hear even from our senators things about extreme risk protection orders, comprehensive background checks, those types of things. I think people have been waiting for a very long time, and that's one of the things that our organization, we got organized right after Sandy Hook in 2012. And we've learned very quickly that the federal capital is the finish line.
Yeah.
And we've been doing a lot of work at the local level and states, going even to school boards. And we are working our way to make, we are now seeing that candidates for the presidency are talking about what are we going to do about gun violence in America. So it is very much of interest to the American people to address this problem.
Sheriff Baxter.
Yeah, there is an appetite for some kind of change. We see these weapons of mass destruction, if you will. These are weapons that are designed for the military, and I'm if you would, a pro-gun person. But there needs to be some kind of responsibility, and when you have this much freedom comes responsibility. We've said that for 200 years in America. So I'm looking for some additional legislation that would help us. We passed legislation, we argue about bayonet lugs at the end of a weapon, or the pistol grip on a weapon, which are totally irrelevant to the bullet coming out the end of the weapon at 3,000 feet per second. So limiting drum magazines, limiting bump stocks are good common sense. Securing weapons. We had a gun store here in Monroe County that let hundreds of guns onto the streets, most in probably the streets of the city of Rochester. That's just good legislation. That makes sense. It's common sense. I think we can all agree on that. But I'd like to go deeper into it, and let's see what we can do at comprehensive, not just looking at the tool. And some of these weapons are tools of mass destruction. That's why the military's carrying them. They're carrying the most efficient weapon they can.
Very good. Thank you both. We'll be right back, by the way. We'll get our guests to respond to statements made today by some local lawmakers about stopping the violence.
At Monroe Community College, we've been opening doors for students for more than 50 years. Join the more than 500,000 alumni who have begun their inspiring stories at MCC. Apply now at monroecc.edu/apply.
Sometimes close is too close for comfort. That is, unless we're talking about the closest gaming action around. At Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack, with 1,100 machines, live horse racing, free entertainment, and a delicious buffet. The action is always close by.
Sleep apnea is a dangerous, all too often untreated disease. It affects energy, metabolism, memory, can cause heart disease, stroke, and even death.
I come here, I get the mouthpiece. This is it. It's made life a whole lot simpler, and a wife very happy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Bellino at the Alma Dental Group. Have you been diagnosed with mild sleep apnea or attempted and failed to tolerate your CPAP? Call our office to arrange a consultation about how to get a better night's sleep for you and everyone.
Need glasses now? We have a lens lab in every store and can make them for you in as little as 30 minutes.
2 pairs start at just $38.71, and 91% of our glasses are ready the same day. No one makes glasses faster than iMart Express.
Don't miss the grand opening of Miller Brick's new Bellegarde Design Center. Save 10% off any Bellegarde product. Buy a patio, get a free fire pit. Ask for details. Miller Brick's been creating beautiful outdoor spaces with Bellegarde for decades. Their Bellegarde authorized contractors are the best in Rochester, which guarantees your job gets done right. See the newest products and talk with the experts. Schedule your outdoor project now and enjoy it all summer long.
Welcome home, Miller Brick.
One day, one choice that will change your life. It's the one-day mattress sale at Raymore and Flanagan.
I'm at my best when I sleep well.
With these two, I've got to keep my energy up.
Every mattress is on sale, so test before you rest and get a free adjustable base with mattress purchases over $9.99 and save up to 33% on queen mattress sets with no interest for an incredible 60 months. The one-day mattress sale at Raymore and Flanagan.
At Monroe Community College, we've been opening doors for students for more than 50 years. Join the more than 500,000 alumni who have begun their inspiring stories at MCC. Monroe Community College. Inspiring every day.
Welcome back. We solicited statements this week from local lawmakers asking them what can be done to stop the violence. Republican Congressman Tom Reed said this: Congress must act to address the issue of mental illness in the handling of criminal offenders these events are so often associated with, that lead to the violent behaviors this tragedy so sadly represents. And Congressman Joe Morelli, a Democrat, said in part, "I'm proud to co-sponsor legislation to enact universal background checks on all gun sales, a bipartisan measure that passed the House with overwhelming support earlier this year, but has yet to be taken up by the Senate. I also co-sponsor measures that would ban military-style assault weapons and high-capacity magazines." I'd like to get your reaction to these statements. We'll start with you, Sharon.
I agree that we have to do something about support for folks who need mental health services and for the mentally ill. We know that's very problematic, but I also think that's a cop-out. Every nation deals with mental illness and at similar rates per capita as the United States, but we are the only country that is experiencing this epidemic of gun violence. And the difference is easy access to firearms. So you can see that the data is very, very clear. And I think one of the biggest issues, particularly from my own experience, is that firearms really take away the element of time. My family was impacted by domestic violence. My cousin and her daughter were murdered by an ex-boyfriend who was distraught that they were not going to get back together again. He took his own life. And that's a really painful experience. And being able to walk into a Walmart and buy a Glock and then go to dinner with his daughter and the mother of his child, it was a very easy and fast way to kill them all and then take his own life. Whereas if he didn't have those means, there was a history of violence between the two of them. They didn't have things like probably the background checks that we even have today. He would have had more time to struggle through, get support from his friends and his community to work through, and they would all still be with us today. I think when we see so many of these situations, again, it's time, and these are temporary situations, and people need help. So that's why legislation like extreme risk protection orders can be so critical. Families are the closest to these individuals and can identify when their behavior is different, when they might be having a mental break and might be in need of services, and help to keep the firearms away from them so they don't hurt themselves or someone else.
Thank you. And real quick, Sheriff Baxter, you've been on both sides of the political aisle, so to speak. Is this a matter of trust? Because there seems to be some amount of coalescing around certain ideas, but it seems to me that both sides don't trust each other when it comes to enacting it.
We're talking off the air, I think a lot of it's intentional, that we dig into foxholes, or we dig in our corners, or we point fingers at each other, and there's power, there's I'm with a group. When you sit down with people that might have, you think, a divergent position on this, and you have conversations over a cup of coffee, it's amazing how close we are, how centric we all are on common sense stuff. And I just got to hit on the mental health thing, and I might just agree just a bit. 2015 in America, we had the highest number of suicides in America. 2016, we had the highest number of opioid and other overdoses. These shootings going across, America, I do believe we have a serious social / mental health crisis going on in our hands. And in addition to the tools that make it for rapid killing, it's a recipe for disaster. This is the perfect storm, if you see. But I think we also have to we can't forget the mental health social component here of why these are all occurring. When you look at suicides, overdoses, mass killings.
Very good. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us today. We're going to get to Maureen in just a minute after the break, but again, thank you both for sharing your thoughts on all this right now. Now, coming up, we're going to have two different guests answering your questions. They're going to break down some of their beliefs. They're going to sit on different sides of this. Before we head over, I do want to share Toni Morrison's thoughts when she was asked a few years ago at Northeastern University for her take on the prevalence of violence. And she said this: "Evil and violence take the stage, all of it. It needs so much to call our attention, but goodness doesn't need anything. If it says anything at all, it's a whisper." So while we focus on evil and violence right now, I'll add that we here at News 8 have and will continue to do our part to give those whispers of goodness a voice. We'll be right back.
News 8, sponsored by Clear Choice Hearing and Balance.
Hurt in a car? It's time to focus on getting a car accident lawyer. Why choose William Mattar over a general injury firm? Because of our focus on motor vehicle accidents. Every year, we help thousands with serious injury claims. We know when the insurance company is not being fair, and we can hold them accountable, winning significant compensation for our clients. Call the firm with the focus, the firm with the force. Call 444-4444.
Our replacement windows last forever, got no drafts, they look great.
Those aren't comfort windows.
She's adorable. Yeah, honey, they're just as good, okay?
Hey, Kimmy, we want a window with a lifetime warranty. Made right here in New York from a company that's been in business for 40 years. We want comfort windows. Capiche?
Take 15% off with no payments and no interest for 1 full year. Call, click, or visit Comfort Windows today.
One day, one choice that will change your life. It's the one-day mattress sale at Raymore and Flanigan.
I'm at my best when I sleep well.
With these two, I've got to keep my energy up.
Every mattress is on sale, so test before you rest and get a free adjustable base with mattress purchases over $9.99 and save up to 33% on queen mattress sets with no interest for an incredible 60 months. The one-day mattress sale at Raymore and Flanigan.
It's the Honda Summer Spectacular event. That means more euphoric feelings that come from getting a great deal on a Honda CR-V or HR-V. Or from getting a Pilot or Passport. All part of 2019's best SUV brand. Hurry in today and experience the joy for yourself.
Get a great deal on the Honda CR-V, part of 2019's best SUV brand, at the Honda Summer Spectacular event.
They each came for love and found it. Who will walk away with the ultimate prize? Season finale, CBS tonight.
Tonight, plot twist. The underdogs have taken control.
We are taking it back. This is our house.
Now, former allies are bitter enemies.
You made it worse.
Glad I could trust you, Jack. Fighting it out for a last chance.
You don't know who's even real in here.
To stay in the game.
I'm not going to go down without a fight.
New Big Brother, CBS tonight.
Friend for Life, sponsored by Pants at Peace by Harris Funeral Home.
Joining me in just a moment, Dr. Elizabeth Murray from URMC and attorney Paul Ciminelli, who's done extensive work on Second Amendment cases. I want to thank both of them for being here in advance. Now, New York is one of several states to enact a red flag law that takes guns away from people deemed dangerous. Those opposed to the law worry it'll be used too loosely and to justify mass confiscation. Today on WXXI's Connections with Evan Dawson, Governor Cuomo talked with Megan Mack about New York's mental health database that's been collecting information for some time now. Here's the sound from the governor.
Just to show you what it's accomplished, we now have 100,000 seriously mentally ill people on the mental health database that could have bought a gun in New York who can't now buy a gun because we have a mental health database.
All right, that's Governor Cuomo speaking today. Dr. Murray, Mr. Ciminelli, thank you both for being here.
You're welcome.
Paul, what's your response to that?
I would say that probably a large number of people on that list shouldn't have firearms, but I will tell you, the way the list has been set up and managed, there are people, acting law enforcement people that are on that list that shouldn't be on that list. So, yes, it is catching some of the folks that shouldn't have firearms, but there are people on there that are struggling terribly to get off that list and running into a pretty high brick wall to do that.
Dr. Murray?
I think that we are doing a disservice if we think there's going to be one quick fix, that this is really a huge problem, that so many public health problems are very similar, and that there isn't one easy quick fix. So we need to make sure that we are looking at all aspects of this, that yes, mental health does play a role. Important reminder here, mental health with regards to the number of suicides by firearms, not necessarily the mass shootings, but there is many other things. There's the accidental injuries by children finding unlocked guns. So there's many things we need to do. Looking at mental health is just one part.
We had many people write in. We're going to go to Maureen in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about something that Matt Mormon said, a viewer. He said, we need to repeal the Dickey Amendment and let the CDC study that affects gun violence in this country. Should Congress repeal laws that halt studies of gun violence? Now, I wanted some context real quick to this. The Dickey Amendment was passed in the mid-90s, and yes, A lot of pro-gun control advocates say that it is preventing studying gun violence. Those who enacted the law, NRI supported it, they said that they felt the CDC was becoming too pro-gun control, and that's why they enacted the law. So, Paul, why don't I start with you? Your thoughts on repealing the Dickey Amendment?
I think information is good. I think one of the challenges is to make sure that when we do studies that they are controlled, much like they have to be in you know, we've seen some abuses in academic settings, in other settings, and I think that was the concern. But information is key, and you know, sticking our head in the sand is not a solution.
Dr. Murray?
Right, I think that, you know, technically, did it forbid any research? No, it did not, but it really nowadays has kind of come to mean that. And so whatever the intention was, the outcome is that research was really halted. And yes, we have to understand the scope of the problem, and doing research is critical. Exactly like you said, rigorous studies is what needs to happen, and there are other agencies that are working on that, but wouldn't it be better to have one unified group instead of many small groups, if we could have one group working together and getting the funding they need?
Very good.
I think what we found is that many of the groups that are purporting to do research have an agenda, so we're seeing research coming from two ends of the spectrum, and I don't think that, I haven't seen anything that I'm confident in all the reading that I've done.
Yeah, very good. Maureen, I know you've probably been slammed with questions. Can we get another one for our lovely guests?
Absolutely. A lot of people understandably worried about how to stay safe in public places should there be an active shooting situation, most especially the workplace. This question from Scott Peters, of viewer Scott Peters. He asks, why do you think some organizations are reluctant to conduct training for employees and place better security measures in place?
Thoughts on that, Dr. Murray?
I think we need the sheriff back to answer that question. Well, I don't know. I mean, I am not aware of any agency that's refused to do training.
Why don't we speak specifically to your area of expertise, with it, which is pediatrics. When you deal with daycares and schools, do you find that they are making changes?
And yes, as a parent, I mean, I hear it from my own child about the safety drills they're having in school, and luckily she's at a point where I don't think she fully processes the purpose behind these drills. But yes. We know, we hear it when we interact with children all of the time, that they are realizing that they have some fear of going to school, and it's not the, I'm going to miss mom and dad, it's what's going to happen to me, what's the scary thing that they're trying to protect me from.
All right, thank you both. We'll be right back with you. Straight ahead, we're going to hear some of your comments.
Know what stinks? Stink bugs. Call Bugman. Stink bugs like to live in our homes when the weather gets cool. Not cool. Bugman shields your home with a protective barrier to prevent stink bugs from being unwanted winter guests. Call 334-3880. Ready for some fun? Come to Seabreeze. Enjoy classic adult and kiddie rides, great food, shows, and more. Then get wet in the new Soak Zone and have some water park fun. For the best deal, buy your tickets online at Seabreeze.com. Summer doesn't get any better than this. So much family fun, so close to home.
Come get your summer at Seabreeze.
Get park info at Seabreeze.com.
Attention parents. All kids going to public, private, and religious schools, pre-K and daycare, must get all required vaccinations unless they have a valid medical exemption. Vaccines are safe and effective, and the best protection from serious diseases like measles, mumps, and whooping cough. Children who are not vaccinated may not be allowed to attend school. Find out about important vaccination deadlines. Talk to your healthcare provider and visit health.ny.gov/schoolvaccines.
This summer, come to Lake Ontario for lots of family fun. With free fishing through Labor Day and half-off camping and vehicle entrance fees at state parks. Plan your Lake Ontario adventure at iloveny.com.
I hired the team at Bathfitter, and now I've got a bathtub that I love. They use the same high-quality materials that they use in luxury hotels, which is great. Except when my mom comes to visit, she thinks she's staying in a 5-star hotel.
Housekeeping!
Yes, Mom?
Sweetie, I could use some fresh towels.
From luxury hotels to homeowners, Bathfitter exceeds expectations
and we've got over 2 million satisfied customers to prove it. Call now or visit bathfitter.com for a free in-home consultation.
Buzzing in your walls? Wet spot on the ceiling? They could be yellow jackets. Don't take them on yourself. These aggressive invaders can be eliminated for good by Bugman. Call Bugman to the rescue. 334-3880.
Here's what's coming up tonight on News 8 WROC. Love Island, Big Brother, SWAT. Then News 8 at 11. Wednesday's primetime lineup is sponsored by Dorschel Automotive Group.
Before we wrap up, we want to move from your questions to your comments. Maureen?
Yeah, I have a lot of great discussion online, and here are some of the top comments we've gotten this past half hour. Maggie Morey writes, "A lunatic with an agenda will always find a way. You can't ban everything." Teresa Thurston says, "Best way to stop mass killings is to start teaching love and less hate. That starts at home." And finally, Nathan Worth says, "Regardless how many shootings there are, I will just continue living my life. Can't live in fear of the unknown or the unpredictable." Adam.
Thank you, Maureen. Going back to that first comment, Paul, are we stuck in the mud here?
I don't know that we're stuck in the mud. I would say that, as the doctor said, this isn't going to be solved with any type of just legislation or increased mental health spending. It's a societal thing. There are countries like Switzerland where every house has a military firearm in it. Countries like Israel, we don't see mass shootings there. So I think we have to look deeper than that at the bigger picture about family, about church, about community, about all those things that were our strength that we've changed over the last 30 or 40 or 50 years.
Dr. Murray, final word?
Yeah, I think we need to listen to what our children are telling us, and right now they're scared. And we as adults have a duty to protect them and keep them safe, and that's going to come from a variety of ways. And there is no one answer, but the best way to do this is to compromise and work on the solutions that are multifactorial. Mental health concerns, public health safety concerns, and yes, some smarter gun control.
All right. Thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate your perspective. And thank you for watching and participating in this discussion. Please feel free to keep it going on News 8's Facebook page. That's it for News 8 at 5:30. Coming up next is